You know, internships are down across the board. I think there was like a almost 20% reduction in just internship postings.
Ario was at one point 50% of all white collar jobs are going to be eliminated. He's backed off that now to 20%.
And then you have the leaders of the major frontier labs, whether it's Elon or Dario, actively talking about not just job disruption, but job destruction.
Oracle, 30,000 roles. Meta, which I want to talk about, 7,000 employees. Cisco, 4,000 roles. Intuit, 3,000 roles. Cloudflare, 1,100 roles. Snap, 1,000. Wix, 1,000.
It's not just the college grads that are feeling that. It's everyday Americans and people around the world, right? Where this feeling towards AI went from a hopeful kind of excitement of, oh, look what it could do, to distrust.
All right, gentlemen, we are talking the AI job apocalypse. Let's get right into it. All right, let's start with the college booing. So I want to make sure I have but like it was, I'm forgetting all the colleges, but it was 4 colleges. Anytime AI came up, there was a boo. Either of you have like just a sense of what's behind this? Why the disenfranchisement with a generation that uses AI every day? They got through all their exams, they got through all their stuff, but when AI comes up, they're just flat out against it. What's going on? What's the temperature of the youth, the country? What's y'all's take?
First thing is, can we stop using apocalypse on everything? Because we had the SaaS apocalypse, the SaaS apocalypse, and now we have job apocalypse. It's the doomerism around everything is a little bit hyperbolic. But Suprit, what do you think?
It's tough. I mean, I understand that they are using AI for a lot of things, but I can also see that they've been told not to, right? They're told not to do it. They're told not to leverage it, to not use it. And so I think there's an emotional reaction with these boos, right? Of uncertainty of, what does this mean? We've been studying for, 3-4 years, whatever it is, to get a degree in what we've gotten a degree in. All of a sudden, it seems like in 18 months, the world has changed, right? And especially the ones graduating now. So I think that there is a natural reaction to that. I think there's also, I do feel like they're tapping into something that a lot of people feel, which is there's a small group of people in the world, like 10 people, that are really driving the discussions forward on AI. And these college grads are not part of that group, right? So it's almost like they're being told something that is so amazing and so great, and it's going to change the world, but you don't really get to participate in the involvement of it or the governance of it or the distribution of it. You're just being told that, hey, you better use it and you better get on board, or your job's, there's not going to be a future for you the same way maybe there was for their parents. So I see that there is that emotional reaction to it. And I think that's what's spilling out and what you're seeing.
I think that's probably one of the good points that you made, is like the asymmetric distribution of wealth. You have like this, I don't know what to call it, technocracy, the technocrats who are having $1 trillion valuations coming up. You have unlimited access to capital, and in all of these cycles, they always converge to a monopoly or a duopoly. And so you now have clearly Anthropic leading the charge. We talked about Google on this podcast, clearly well capitalized, well positioned. But and there's this, and then like just the press. I think just, regardless of what the data says, which I want to get into in a second, but the rhetoric coming out of even Anthropic about, Dario was at one point 50% of all white collar jobs are going to be eliminated. He's backed off that now to 20%. And then there was a report in one of the locals, like, unemployment for new college graduates is as high as it's been since, COVID was an anomaly, but it's the highest it's ever been. The reality is it's only 6%, which is totally normal which is less than it was in 2010 after the great, other recession that we had. Um, there's just a lot of dialogue that's heavily negative. Do you guys have a view of like where this is all is coming from?
Well, it's coming from the leaders of the industry, which makes it kind of unique from what happened in the 90s with .com, where, maybe the negative side of .com was there was fluff, and it was, whether it's vaporware or whether it's all kind of inflated expectations around the internet. But the leaders of the internet companies at that time were not predicting doom and gloom. And then you have the leaders of the major frontier labs, whether it's Elon or Dario, um, actively talking about not just job disruption, but job destruction. So, of course, students who are trying to get a job are going to take that negativity in from the people that are creating the technology, which is little weird. And then it gets into why did maybe Dario's tone change and maybe what's really going behind some of this. Are some of these leaders really concerned about an AI singularity, or are they creating some artificial fear in order to get more government regulation where they can come in and establish themselves as the architects of the regulation that then ultimately benefits them? And so that's why they're being kind of doomerish about it. I don't know, but I don't really blame the students.
No.
I don't either. I mean, I think one aspect of this that could potentially get lost in the booze at commencement speeches is I was reading about how, you know, internships are down across the board. I mean, I think there was like a almost 20% reduction in just internship postings. I mean, so they're starting to see this not just upon graduation, but even as they get into the job market. If you think of college sophomores or juniors looking for that summer job to try to build into a career, those are getting harder to get. So I think there's this residual kind of feeling, right, where they're dealing with this not just at this point in time, but it's started to build up over the last year, if not longer. And you're seeing a spill out of the reactions to that.
And AI is an easy
Hmm.
focus for this because there's other things going on as well. Not only is there AI disruption, but there's the value of their college education, which is being held into question, where they're going, what did I do? Do I have six figures in debt? And there's that undercurrent around the value of their college education, which is kind of which AI is a good focal point for, to say AI is taking my jobs, where really it's the value of their college education which they're questioning.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's also no playbook, right? Like there's nobody else going through. So we're all going through this together. So it's not as if you can lean on a parent or some other influence. Be like, well, this is what's going to happen over the next few years, or this is the path, or here's some alternatives. We're all being thrown into this, I think, at the same time, and we're all it's sink or swim.
Yeah, here's the data that was put out by the New York Fed. So I think if you look at the recent college graduate is the blue line. So it's always, so you have young unemployment, which is always the highest, but I guess seems within range. You had this COVID spike. But it's curious to me. I think it seems like very dangerous that we're stopping internships. With the baby boomer generation aging out, we're going to lose all this experience, this massive transfer of wealth. Then we're going to have like this whole middle layer of people who just aren't trained. And so I don't think it's as bad. I think it's more cyclical, and we'll get into this term AI washing. But I just, I don't like the trend. I guess the question I want to ask is like, what entry level jobs are actually being impacted? I mean, we talk about entry level jobs. AI can do these things. It's better for me as a CEO to give AI to an experienced worker to do the entry level task. Some of those, that framework just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, like if I take Sherlock as an example, like developers, like AI is the best at development. That's the one thing that it does really, really well. Job recs for developers are at an all-time high. So it's just like this disconnect. I think I was shocked. I was listening to Mark Andreessen on a podcast recently. He says the very top 1% developers are making 50 million a year. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, I'd much rather start training young people than having to pay a premium for developers. Because in this case of, even though there's vibe coding, there's a tremendous amount of effort that still goes on into a project release or implementing these tools.
100%. That organizational transformation is still catching up. Um, I listened to a good podcast on, it was the Moonshots podcast, and they were talking about, for any company over 100 employees, internal disruption from AI is really hard. Just through, they use the term, and I love this, the antibodies within the organization that resist the change. No amount of AI can accelerate across that. It's gonna bump into resistance where, and I think this is right, because I think we've seen this, in my current gig, where we have over 100 people, and I think that's the kind of the barrier. If you're smaller, you can say, "Hey, everybody, get on board. We're going to radically change how we do things." And of course, you're going to get efficiencies, whether it's with employees or output or costs, like all that's going to happen. Over 100 employees, there's this resistance that happens. And what they were recommending was creating kind of innovation teams outside of the standard org, and then using that as a way to prove and then grow anew from the outside for the business. And if it's bigger than 100 employees, I don't care how good the AI is, you're just not able to have these kind of dramatic headcount reductions or massive massive acceleration in output. You just kind of, there's an internal change which is not happening as fast as people would like, or maybe it can't happen. I don't know.
Well, that's so funny. So, the antibody one, that's great. I think that's, that's a psychological one. But then you have this concept that was coined by Axios, token maxing. CEOs like, I want billions in savings, billions, y'all. I want billions. And then they turn around, they get a $200 million token bill. Do you see the story? An AI consultant on X? No, he actually leaked it on Axios. It says that this AI consultant had a client where they forgot to turn off the caps on Claude Code, and they got a monthly bill of $500 million.
Yep. I heard that story from friends and colleagues. I had a friend who told me a very similar story.
I
Yeah, and
mean,
we've talked about that before on this pod, right? Where there was going to have to be a balance between the token costs and the human labor costs, and people were starting to look at this months ago. I think it was a couple months ago we talked about, having to be aware of that. Is you were shifting that cost from, like, a software engineer, for example, to the cost of deploying and using these tokens, and people are learning as they go in a large respect, right? And some of these small companies are getting hammered for these costs because they don't have the governance, the infrastructure, the checks and balances, all the stuff that you need to kind of manage this.
Yeah, and the use cases for, like, what types of AI to use when. I think a lot of
Hmm.
the models are getting smarter about putting a filtering layer in where certain requests, they can route a different place where it doesn't use as many tokens. But the problem is,
mhm.
for a lot of the AI tools, that runs counter to their business by, like, reducing token costs. So those incentives are not aligned right now for efficient token use, because it's going to happen. I know how I use Claude. I'm sure you guys experience this too, where you're like, do I really am I just using this as glorified autocomplete? Am I wasting too many tokens for this? And I monitor my costs, and I'm not doing development or then. So my costs are like in the hundreds of dollars a month, not thousands of dollars. So even if I'm off a little bit, it's not a big deal. But when you scale that over a large business, if you are the AI layer, you don't really have an incentive to say, how do I create efficient use of tokens here? Because that actually is going to impact your revenue. But that's what's needed for a lot of this stuff.
I think it's just like, it's well intentioned by CEOs. I know they're attracted to it, but like, hey, team, tokens are free. As far as I'm concerned, just go play with the stuff, and you have a very you have a workforce that might be technical, but they're not developers, and they don't understand how this all works together, and they're not even given good environments where you know you can play with the tokens, but like keep it within this platform or use this database, use this hierarchy, only this MCP environment that we've set up specifically, and you're only allowed to call it, every so often. I just think there's a lot of mistakes being made with token waste and the token maxing. I want to come back to the thoughts on the layoffs. So there is a little bit of a reality here happening. So Oracle, 30,000 roles. Meta, which I want to talk about, 7,000 employees. The way they did that was hilarious. And the way they continue to marginalize employees is hilarious. Block, Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, 4,000 roles. That doesn't surprise me. Cisco, 4,000 roles. Intuit, 3,000 roles. Cloudflare also was a funny story. 1,100 roles. Snap, 1,000. Wix, 1,000. That was not AI related. That was AI washing. And Coinbase, 700. Were these actually AI related, or Michael?
I don't think so. I think there's the COVID overhiring is coming off. I think they're using AI potentially as a reason to kind of clean up the bottom. And then for some of these companies, you see a number like 1,000 or 10,000, and then these companies are massive. Like doing a 10% layoff is par for the course, AI or not. That is not a radical thing for a business. And I've worked with friends, or I have friends who kind of get on the AI doomer side of things, and they're usually non-technical people. And they hear all this, and they're on the political bandwagon of AI bad, and talking about AI apocalypse. And they're like, so and so just laid off 10,000, employees. I'm like, that company has 100,000 employees.
Yeah.
They laid off 10% of their workforce. I've dealt with 10% workforce layoffs regularly.
That's interesting.
AI or not a radical thing to reduce headcount by 10%. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think to a certain extent there was overhiring, probably even some talent hoarding going on from years past. And I think I forget where I read it or heard it, but what's the saying, like, don't waste a crisis. And there's a crisis, and you can easily blame AI for taking care of things that you've wanted to take care of for a while. Maybe it's a bloated workforce. Maybe it's an inefficient workforce. Maybe you're trying to increase margins, profitability for your shareholders. I mean, there's a number of reasons. It's not, I think it would be silly to say that AI is the reason for all these layoffs. That's just not the case. I think about a lot of these, it's the easy headline and it's the easy thing to blame, but there's a lot of factors over the last, 3, 4, 5 years that have probably contributed to where we are.
Yeah, I think not only was there talent hoarding, but they were able to do it because the cash hoarding that they had.
Right.
They had just unbelievable
So
piles
much
of
cash. Yeah.
so much cash, and now they're actually, looking at, I mean, we're in a recession. No one's talking about we're being uplifted by just a few stocks, but like, with inflation, general, spending, it, it's recessionary environment. And so, yeah, they're doing the right thing, doing workforce layoffs. I mean, that shouldn't be surprising to anybody, but I think it's just the way these things were handled, particularly, Wix, Cloudflare, Facebook was the worst, but they put it out there as like a positive signal. Oh, look we're getting AI, and, it's because of AI. Aren't we a great public stock that you should be looking at? And just how, I don't know, death that was on the public sentiment, particularly Facebook. Did you see the story about Facebook? They were putting recorders on everybody's work.
Yeah. To learn about how people do their jobs before they lay them off. That's
to train the replacement AI.
I wonder how that's working out.
On a kind of related note about like kind of like training to replace work. Have you guys seen this company? I think it's Shift that's doing the house cleaning.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So they will offer to clean your house for free. But their cleaners come in and they have cameras on their hats. And the whole purpose of the company is because it's recording how people do labor. In this case, they're starting with house cleaning. but it will turn into plumbing, electrician, yard work. And I think what's going on behind the scenes is that they're selling the video to robotics AI.
This is the social media model.
So yeah, you're the product, you get a free service, but what it's going to do is those cleaners are just there as a temporary replacement for how would you train a robot to do that? And like just like what Zuckerberg's doing, like recording keystrokes, that's designed to say, how do employees actually work? Because if I need to put agents in here and maybe you're a customer service rep, and I want to know how are we actually doing customer service? Not what does the AI learn by reading the internet? Like, how do we actually do customer service? I'm recording what's going on so I can train my own AI to do that. Because a lot of the AI training needs don't naturally exist on the internet, right? So the first wave of AI was all trained on freaking Reddit and Wikipedia and what nonsense that's on the internet, which you get this kind of good version one of how these AI works, right? But then you have these other things that are not on the internet, right? How does customer service really work, right? How do you clean a toilet? How do you fix the electrical box? All these things do not have content available so you could see like how hands and bodies work. So you could trade. So somebody's got to come in there and do that. And these guys created a company that its whole purpose is to create AI training material.
This is like
Coming for the service jobs too.
It's there. Yep.
Well,
Then we'll have a real job apocalypse. Then we'll have that.
Then it's real. Yeah.
3 or 4 years, we'll have that one. Yeah.
Well, on the job apocalypse thing, like, because I think this ties into that point. We have the housekeepers coming in. We have a massive baby boomer issue coming at us, and like our demographic is so reliant on immigration. We're below, people replacement rate in this country. Korea, Japan, China, way worse situation than we are. So you see China investing so much in hardware and robots to overcome this. I mean, like, maybe the unemployment rate just goes out with a whimper because honestly, we're just replacing jobs that we had to have replaced by technology.
That's a great way to look at that. And maybe what you see is you don't see a decline in the unemployment rate, even if you see job loss. And you also may not see a corresponding decline in per capita GDP because you're getting some automation to fill in the declining birth rate and the boomer die-off retirement that'll eventually happen.
Well, then I think as it relates to these college grads, the stat is not really unemployment, it's underemployment. And looking at do those jobs require college degrees? Are those going filled or unfilled? Is it that's spiking or declining? I think that there are different measures that you can look at to get a more accurate picture of what's happening and the market for these, call it 20 to 24-year-olds that are entering the workforce.
Well, Nick, I think our kids are about the same age, right? In high school. And everybody knows if you have kids that are about to graduate, which I do, a recurring conversation with dads, with moms is always the value of a college degree in 2026, 2027. The AI story, that story was happening anyway, but layering AI on top of it creates this whole, are you creating underemployed people, to Suprit's point, because they do have these education and these skills, but there's just not jobs for that. So therefore they become underemployed somewhere else.
Oh my gosh. So right back to the New York Fed. One, I want to point out the median career wage for a college graduate by major. Yeah, there's not much of an issue here. And then you have underemployment too, which I'm not quite sure how criminal justice, maybe not as much, but like nursing, aerospace, civil engineering. The usual suspects. Yeah.
Well, this is interesting because this is 2024. So this is recently updated.
That's true.
Aerospace makes sense, which is, first, number one, nursing obviously makes sense, which with what we talked about, not a surprise there. Aerospace is newly on this board. 10 years ago, they would not have been aerospace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Space tech, which is hard not software, but like, hard technology is obviously up there. You'd think civil engineering would be there too with the manufacturing boom, and there's a lot of investment going into that. Computer engineering makes sense. Special ed in elementary education, that seems, I don't know how on the, you have it sorted on the
On
unemployment
the
rate. Okay.
underemployment.
Employment rate.
I won't go
Yeah.
back to wages.
No, but you're spot on with those two. I mean, even if you look at the jobs report from yesterday, right? It was education and healthcare that were driving things forward, right? So, I mean, you're talking about nursing, you're talking about special education, you're talking about all these fields. Like that's what's driving the job, the jobs that are getting filled right now, at least.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I want to go back to Dario and Anthropic. Why the negative Nelly for a company doing 45 billion a year, $1 trillion IPO? Have you ever seen a company in the tech space be so negative on their technology?
Well, and yesterday, I don't know if you saw yesterday, he encourages AI labs to slow down development because, because so, on top of, potentially walking back the impact on employment and jobs and automation, things like that. I think it was yesterday where he said they released a blog about how AI was becoming too smart and being able to fix itself, and all the frontier labs should
Yeah, the recursive
slow
learning.
development down. Which
And I'm sure he's
look,
doing that. They're
I'm
doing that.
not I'm not disagreeing, or but I just think the timing of this is also very curious. Like it's easy to say, oh, that's funny. Everybody should slow down right before IPO.
Yeah. Right.
But there's a lot of walking back of comments right now.
I think you need to look at, all the leaders in the AI space and go through their track record. And you could take, there are certain people, I think you put Elon into the bucket of had a genuine concern about AI safety before it was fashionable, before AI was even a thing, and put his money where his mouth is to say, we should do this open source. We should have, it should be a nonprofit. And that was like his thing. And then everybody else, got on board. And a lot of the things now, like with Dario, I can't help but think very cynically that this is all a defense mechanism to protect his business, which is
Yes.
growing like gangbusters. And you're coming in and you're simultaneously telling the industry you should slow down, where behind the scenes, he's going, speed up. Like, we got
Yeah.
this. And then you're lobbying for regulation, which you want to help write so that you can put walls around the way you've done it and tell any other upstart not to do the things that you did in order to grow where you did. And I think that's the cynical take, and I don't think that's too far off.
No, I agree with you. Capturing like regulatory capture, like I think it was Chama Papatia on the All In podcast. He compared it to game theory. Like if you game this thing all out, all the way to the end, the biggest balance sheets in the world are going to be governments. And like they're not going to not take this. So you're going to have competing AIs by ideology and governments. And so you game it out, and you want regulatory capture to be in the best position when that actually happens. Well, it makes sense that he's trying to fit the narrative, asking for more regulation. At the time of this podcast, President Trump's AI's legislation was put on hold, was taken off the docket. David Sachs, also of the All In podcast, is on his advisory board. He was very much against it. Because, as a lot of people say, we're only 6 months ahead of China. Why slow this down? It becomes more of a national security issue. Dario wants to be in that. I mean, he's a very interesting character. Have you guys ever read his Machines of Loving Grace essay?
No, I heard about that.
I have not. No.
Okay. So Bill Gurley pointed this out. He's the founder of Benchmark, but this was it's based on a poem, and the ending of the poem is something around the fact of like, I go back to my mammal ancestors and I hang out with them, and I'm taken care of by this Machines of Loving Grace. And Dario talks about this world where there's agentic capitalism happening, and they give us what we want in universal income, and we don't really have to work anymore. I don't want to live in that world. I don't like that vision. But that's what, and what Bill Gurley said he's midwifing a deity. What I mean, like, I don't know. Again, I get really lost in like, who are these people with these trillion-dollar companies?
But you're what you're hitting on is that again, it's something we talked about earlier, which is there's like 3 of these people, and they're setting the tone for not just the development side of things and everything that's happened, but also the regulation side. And of course, it's easy for those to, they're so advanced and they're so out in front of everybody else and they're so powerful. And if you think, look at, I mean, look, we're talking about $1 trillion IPOs, right? As if it's not a major thing. We're just kind of throwing around these numbers, but they're getting to set the tone, set the table, and dictate what comes next from everybody else. All these small and medium sized players have to then fit within their framework that they're going to be able to set up. And I think that to kind of bring it full circle, it's not just the college grads that are feeling that; it's everyday Americans and people around the world, right? Where this feeling towards AI went from a hopeful kind of excitement of, oh, look what it could do, to distrust or angry or a reduction in things like being hopeful for what it could do. And I think it's because you have this really small, narrow, populace that's basically in charge of defining what it gets to be.
I
Yeah, go for it.
No, I was gonna say it's unique because of how fast and how concentrated it is, but I don't think it's meaningfully different than other technical disruptions that we had. And I saw, a good graph of, I think it went back 100 years and it showed um, what the most popular jobs were in America. And it kind of was like one of those kind of like wave charts. And if you go back 100 years, it was like, 60 or 70% of the country was in agriculture.
Mm,
And like those jobs went away, but we make more food than ever. And then you can do the same story for, on either a larger scale or a smaller scale, pick the tech, whether it was printing press or electricity or, cars replaced horses. And now we have massive trillion dollar industries that are the auto industry, and all of those things
Yeah.
happen. Everybody's fine with it. Or they, actually they're fine with it now, but they weren't fine with it at the time. These stories have been told since the Revolution. But to Suprit's point, I think what's different now is how fast and how concentrated it is with individual people, that it's creating a similar backlash, but maybe tuned up.
yeah, I think there is, it's, we're talking about, like, maybe a new you guys ever heard the Larry Page story at a dinner party with Elon? And Elon was like, "Hey, this was before, Google bought DeepMind, and this was before, OpenAI even existed." But, like, he's sitting next to Larry Page and says, like, "We can't let Google, you can't let Google, you can't buy DeepMind." And Larry goes, "Well, because we have to protect humanity." And Larry goes, "You're a speciesist."
Yeah.
And so, like, we're talking about, like, maybe these technocrats believe this is a different species, but I think that's the part that scares everybody a little bit more than industrial revolution. It's like, hey, I'm all for solving cancer, solving the energy crisis, moving towards solar, changing these NIMBY issues so like servers are in space, but I'm not cool being a lower class.
Well, and that's the messaging on this has been bad by the leaders
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the advantages of AI, because what you just said, Nick, if 2 years ago we were talking about breakthroughs in cancer, right? Where like AI solved this cancer and it was real. And now there's stuff like that going on now. Like that's absolutely happening, right?
Totally happening.
But if those were the stories where it's like AI solves cancer, AI solves weather prediction. AI solves, maybe the chatbots solve like, depression or whatever it might be, create a new pharmaceutical, uh, prevented a war instead of created a war. AI,
Or
like,
even like, Demise at Google, like Alpha Fold, right? Where he mapped the entire protein. I mean, like, come
like
on.
if those were the stories that were out there rather than, hey, this is a cool, like better version of Google, and then it's taking like it can code and it takes my job. That's what's in the news because that's what's driving the business. What's driving the investments into AI right now is not investments into cancer research. It's can I have a better coding agent and can it do the job of, 10 developers, or can it replace my marketing team, or is it replacing my training and documentation team? Can it replace teachers because it teaches better? The reason why there's AI investment is because of those use cases.
Yeah.
But if we were leading with the cured cancer, people would be like, shoot, like bring this stuff on. But that's just not
Well,
what's
even that's an incomplete story, right? Like to your point, yeah, AI can potentially write code or do, something or XYZ. But the story is just that. That's going to replace labor. It's not that it's going to replace that function and free up the people that currently do that to do something else or to be more efficient or to expand and grow. It's half the story. And I think
I
that
love
that part of it
yeah.
is bad messaging and it's getting lost.
Yeah, David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, had the best quote of all of this. He goes, "There's not going to be a 25% reduction in labor. There's going to be a 25% reduction in time lost."
Right. Right.
I mean, okay, so now we're freeing up. I mean, this is Star Trek. I think I've said this before, but a worldview where you move AI towards Star Trek or you move towards Terminator. Um, you know, AI as a tool to improve the human condition is really where we should be going with these things.
Yeah.
I,
But it's
I don't know.
this messaging is now coming out, right? An op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and who knows? Is Goldman trying to win the business for the IPOs
Yeah,
for
right.
Anthropic? Or, yeah, I mean, there's easily ways to be cynical about even something like that. Although I do think there's a point to it. There's a validity there.
Well, yeah. Okay.
and
So much so that the Pope had to come out on
oh
this. Michael, you going to say
Yeah.
something?
well, I mean, this is not just a statement. This is a book.
Yes. This is not light reading.
No,
But he says something. He says two things. One, where he totally agrees with Dario, more government oversight. Um, he mistakenly, refers to the Industrial Revolution and one of his predecessors that studied like, and maybe that led to child labor laws and unions. Okay, yeah, that was positive, but the net of the Industrial Revolution was very, very positive. Um, but maybe he's calling for a little bit too much oversight. I get, but he does say something important. He talks about work is dignity for the human being and the human condition. I totally agree with that. And like, I don't want, I don't want us to lose that. Like, I don't want to lose my job. I don't, being a business owner, having employees that are buying homes, making margin in their lives, having kids, moving forward in life, like that's all because of a job. And I don't think universal basic income does anything for us. And like, Dario proposing like, hey, you should tax me. Yeah, I'm growing 10x revenue a year, right? With no end in sight. I'm asymptote, growth, right? It's like, yeah, tax me. I'll provide all these as long as I'm the one dictating where the money goes, and I'm lining my pocket. I don't know if you guys had a comment on the Pope or what is the right worldview on AI now. I mean, I'm very positive on it, but I am a little like very confused. I'm like, I go back and forth sometimes, like, well, who's actually leading this thing? Are we going the right direction?
the
No, I think you said it. I mean, I think that document or that novel, really, that book that he put out, I do think one of the important pieces of it was a reframing of what work is and how it's, I think he said it's something about it being a fundamental good, right? And it benefits that person. And I think that it, it's important to kind of take a step back and understand that perspective. We get really lost in talking about, the AI, the tech, the tokens, the costs, the efficiencies, but from a humanity perspective and from, from for everyday people, work is, it is that fundamental good. It drives a person. It helps them grow. It helps them be, successful in ways not just income related.
Yeah, I think there's a very real analogy to the Industrial Revolution and what happened where people left the farm, moved into factories. They were still working, but that was a dehumanized form of work, which is what the Pope touches on in this
Hmm.
in his document here, this book, is work has value. There's a humanizing quality for doing work. What happened in the Industrial Revolution took that away from a lot of people because they became automatons. They became part of a factory
Yeah.
where their purpose was lost in the greater organization. And there's something about AI doing the same thing where it kind of dehumanizes people. I don't think people stop working. I'm not a proponent of this becomes Star Trek where people just have infinite leisure and there's some type of a universal basic income where people don't need to work. I think human nature is to work. I think the nature of work will change. I think we will probably work less, which is exactly what's happened between the Industrial Revolution and the computer revolution, where we not only do we don't work 6, 7 days a week, we only work 8 hours a day, and then now we work from home. So like we are feeling the benefits of working less. AI will probably continue that, but there's a very real parallel between the dehumanizing nature of the Industrial Revolution and what we're doing, what we're going through.
Well,
Yeah,
by the way,
yeah.
Mike, I think what you just said was important because like that work from home piece, again, to go back to something we talked about earlier, that's also impacting new jobs. And for these younger generations, I mean, remote work is, if you're an employer who has a distributed workforce, it's probably hard for you to justify hiring somebody in that will be fully remote. It's hard to train. It's hard to get people up to speed. I mean, there's all sorts of things besides AI that are impacting the job market and people's sentiments toward that.
And that's a that whole idea of if you are going back to the reasons for frustrations with like recent grads in the job market, AI being maybe the most prominent excuse, but underneath that is value of college degree, and then working from home and how that doesn't make you feel like part of an organization when you're young. If you're
Mm,
older, like we know what it means to be part of a business. We understand working with teams. We've been in an office, like we get that. But if you're brand new and you just came out and now you're dealing with AI, maybe you're a little bit underemployed and you're working from home 5 days a week, that's a really hard thing for a young person to deal with. How do you identify with yourself, the value of the work that you're providing? Like, what does it even mean? You're just at home. It's a new world.
I think we'll end with that. I know you got a hard stop, Michael, but I want to end with the Mark Cuban quote. He says there's two kinds of people. There are AI learners and there are AI non-learners. There are those who went through college cheating their way, having the AI write all their term papers, and there's others that use it for research. Teach me how to do this. If there's any advice we could give the young people is use it as a superpower and make it work for you. So I don't think this is going to change. I appreciate it, gents.
Thanks,
Always.
guys.
Till next
Take
time.
care.